Welcome back to the show, everybody. Check out these headlines here. Jay Clayton may be covering his tracks. I think you're going to see evidence of that today. The SEC wins not one, but two motions today. We'll talk about that. We got John Deaton, and a possible Ripple case ends in September. We're going to hear from old John Deaton and see what it all means. Somebody rolled a beautiful intro.
Digital Perspectives with Brad Kimes. Come on in.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. You can follow me on Twitter at Dig Perspectives at the top of the screen and everything that we're talking about here today. Let's take a look at this right now. We are $1.940 trillion market cap for crypto this morning. We're up by 2.67%. Good morning, everybody. It is April 20th. 2022. Bitcoin 41,700 plus right now. Ethereum 3,100 plus. Number 6 spot right now is 76 cents. It's XRP. We're up 8.22% on the 7-day, ladies and gentlemen, even with the case hanging over our head. Looking right now, the price is 78 cents on Fiat Links. It's 77 cents on the bottom and 79 cents on the top. We'll keep an eye on it. Remember this as we go through our crypto world and news today. The U.S. inflation is at its highest in 40 years. Central banks are living in fantasy land. You got that right. Look, that's why I tell you about Glint Pay and the many different ways that I diversify. This is one of them. You want Glint Pay, gold, not an ETF? That's right. Glint offers direct ownership of your gold, physically allocated directly to you, the owner. ETF gold is allocated to the trustees. There's the big difference. And here's another big difference. You get a debit card that you can put your physically allocated gold on as well. And you can stock up and top up like I've been doing on my card in order to hedge that inflation that is at an all-time high. Link underneath the video, ladies and gentlemen. Now, this is a picture right here that makes me feel amazing. Yes. First saw this from Mr. B XRP. Shout out to Nick Burafedo. This is from Javi right here. He says, look at what Best Buy is now starting to sell in the store. Look at this. Ledger Nanos. Look at that right there. Yes, in Best Buy, ladies and gentlemen. How about that one? Now, this picture reminds me, I like knowing I'm invested this early in this space because I did miss the dot-com boom, but I'm not missing this one. This just tells me how early we are to see this product just now showing up in a Best Buy. That's how early we are, but it's okay for me because I love being able to continue to accumulate, not financial advice. Right here is Monica Long from Ripple X right here saying, congratulations to Allbridge. You've opened the door to XRP Ledger for millions in DeFi with bridges to the Ethereum virtual machine, the EVM, and non-EVM chains. That is the kind of interoperability and integration we want to hear about, and it just keeps getting bigger. Now, let's go on to this because this is all about the case, and we need to find out what's going on here. SEC is 1-2 and got 2 denials, and we'll tell you whether how harmful they are or not. We start right here with the perspective from digital asset investor and John Deaton, which I think really needs to be talked about here. The original tweet from DAI says here, Chair Gensler better start thinking about the midterm elections. That seat in front of Congress is going to be hot. And I think he's absolutely right because with midterm elections coming up, if you see the political wind shift, it could get very difficult for Gary Gensler, who is a Democrat appointee, right? So to that point, I'm not someone who talks about politics on my channel a lot either. But John Deaton says, listen, I really try not to be political most of the time. I have voted for candidates from both parties, as I have done also. But I am hoping the House is flipped for the sole purpose of Gary Gensler having to go before the House Oversight Committee over and over again. He'll likely resign if he does. Remember, sometimes we got to get in that political intersection because our pursuits, not because of an agenda we're trying to pursue, but our pursuits, whether it be through investments, entrepreneurial reasons, end up in the crossroads of the political landscape. Take a look right here. This is a clip that I believe is very political right here. It's again from DAI here, but it's from Blockworks originally, and it's Jay Clayton talking to them. And tell me in the video comments below if you're hearing what I'm hearing, because I believe we're hearing Jay Clayton discuss very quickly here a cover his tracks moment about Ethereum's free pass and about how they will not go, or anyone with a free pass will not go unscathed. Listen to this.
Similar companies, not subject to the same scrutiny from a enforcement point of view. And it's just a matter of jurisdiction, bandwidth, and the like. There's no inherent unfairness in that. It's, who draws the attention, et cetera. And people who are, similarly situated, and one is subject to a regulatory action in some jurisdiction and the other isn't. The one who isn't, may be getting a pass for the moment, doesn't mean they're going to get a pass over time. In fact, if you see someone who is a similar situated product, subject to an enforcement action, you better expect that may come for you.
Let me tell you what, that sounds like to me that somebody's been talking on prepaid phones that you can throw away, and they figured out how to close this loop. And somebody like Gary Gensler potentially has agreed that he's going to come around and spank Ethereum's hiney for that free pass that Jay Clayton allowed them to have along with William Hinman. And it sounds like they're doing a cover your tracks moment here. But what is really not to be forgotten here is that regardless if Ethereum gets some kind of a fine for the free pass, the point is that it has been uncovered through the corruption and certainly what appears to be collusion here, at least on Jay Clayton and William Hinman's part, it would appear that, a monopoly was was created here through Ethereum and the free pass to launch billions of dollars, which we know is not a decentralized network, which is largely controlled by JPM and disguised whales with like JPM. So this is something not to be forgotten, and it is really up to all of us to continue to pound the ground about the free pass and the documents and the emails that the SEC certainly does not want us to see, because the reality is they can't afford for the integrity of the SEC to be completely washed out if the world gets to see those documents. Don't believe it. I think it's still true. Take a look right here. This is the latest of what's going on because the court denies the Ripple defendants the motion to strike the Metz report. We're talking about Albert Metz. The expert testimony here reopens discovery until May 13 to redepose Dr. Metz. The SEC ordered to pay reasonable expenses regarding the filing, the motion, and redeposing of Mr. Metz. Now, shout out to James K. Filing here. Jim, appreciate you always. He goes on to say that even though the SEC gets their way and they've got to pay a few $1,000s to Ripple for the inconvenience, Jim tells us here, the court criticizes the SEC, finding that the SEC has conducted itself improperly by serving an unauthorized supplemental report on the last day of discovery, but declines to strike the Metz supplemental report anyway. So even though they got told, I don't like the way you're rolling and I don't like the way you're going here, I'm going to allow it, which to me tells me, and I'm not a lawyer, but it tells me I'm not going to give you any room for an appeal here. Now let's take a look at this, because Wrath of Common makes a great point in summation of the Dr. Metz information and testimony here. He says, interminable delays feels like, he says, but in this document, judge tells the SEC they're doing it wrong and makes them pay Ripple for the extra time to redepose Dr. Metz. In the end, Metz's unconvincing testimony will be allowed should the SEC want to pay for it. That's really what we're talking about here. Now, let's move on to this, because this is another motion here, and it was the motion to compel production of the Estabrook notes that Brad Garlinghouse testified, and Judge Netburn denies Brad Garlinghouse's motion. The court states that the Estabrook's notes are no different from the notes the court previously found to be protected by privilege. So basically what they're saying is that, the reality is that, and let me stay here for a second, but the reality is what's going on here is that Brad Garlinghouse can testify about what was in the notes. So even though the motion to compel the production of all the Estabrook notes was denied, really, Brad Garlinghouse and Ripple still get the advantage of Brad Garlinghouse's testimony as to what was in the notes. So although the SEC wins 2 today, not 1 but 2 today, it really doesn't look that great for the SEC on that side of things. Now let's take a look at this. John Deaton says he's getting lots of DMs on what happened next with the Ripple XRP case. He goes on to say this Friday, the SEC and Ripple are expected to file a joint proposed scheduling order to Judge Torres. It is likely to contain a deadline to submit any Daubert challenges related to expert testimony. That's where we are. He goes on to say it should also include a deadline to submit summary judgment motions and a date to respond to each summary judgment motion. That means the SEC and Ripple are likely to meet and confer this week unless they already have, to see if they can agree on scheduling. He says, all we know so far is that Ripple is pushing for mid-May, I think the parties will agree to an early June deadline for motions with responses due to end of June. If they can't agree, each side informs the judge of their respective positions and the judge sets the dates. There could be a date reserved for the ability to supplement the briefs based on what happens with Hinman emails and documents. Usually each side pre-motion letters to the court outlining which motions they seek to file and ask the court for permission for. He says, I have no idea whether the practice will continue or whether the parties will ask the court to suspend those local rules and set dates for each motion. Please understand this is my surmising as I have no inside information. We appreciate John Deaton, Jim Filan, all the people who help us, Attorney Hogan, everyone who helps us out here. Now, he goes on to say here about the Estabrook notes. John Deaton says, I admit I got this wrong because he predicted Judge Netburn would order the notes to be produced. He says, I believe she would find the privileged but pierce the privilege because Brad Garlinghouse has no other way of obtaining the evidence, and because it was likely unlike the SBI meeting they also had previously, and find it exculpatory. He goes on here to say the judge disagrees, finds this meeting no different than the meeting with SBI. She's basically saying since Brad was present at the meeting, he can testify to exactly what was said and any impact it had on him and Ripple without reviewing the notes. It's hard to truly evaluate. Now let's take a look at this. The judge disagrees with this meeting, no different than the SBI meeting, and I wanted to show you this because in this is where he's asked from Welfare Millionaire, says, John, what's the absolute best guess as to when this case will be finalized? If you had to pick a month and a year, what say you? He says, absent a settlement, September. So we could possibly see this case finalized by September, absent a settlement. Now that is very encouraging to me. Now, I'm also considering the idea that the SEC somehow figures out how to drag this out into 2023. We shall see. But, again, these are dates that, John and everybody else doesn't have all of the information. So it is best guess scenario, right? But nevertheless, that's what we have from him, and we appreciate that. Here's 2 things before we get out of here. And he says, regardless of anyone's opinion on Judge Netburn or her recent rulings, she gave us 2 absolute gems that will appear in our amicus brief. And here they are. And I remember when they happened, when they were doing the telephonic hearings, when this all first started. The court said, the judge, my understanding of XRP is that not only does it have a sort of currency value, but it also has a utility. And that utility distinguishes it, I think, from Bitcoin and Ether. That is a big understanding from the judge right there. And I love that John Deaton will be putting that in the amicus brief. Here we also see, presumably under this theory then, where she's challenging, excuse me, the SEC on the comments they were making at the time. She says, presumably under this theory then, every individual in the world who is selling XRP would be committing a Section 5 violation based on what you just said. These 2 points really point out just how well Judge Netburn understands the ins and outs of what is going on with this case. And I have to remain positive, ultimately, in the end of the day, that the judge will get it right. That's what I believe on this day. That's going to do it for me. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe. There's a lot going on, but we got to know each and every detail. We got real time and money invested into this stuff. This is not financial advice, just my digital perspectives and others. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe below and check out all the links underneath the video. They're great products and services I use each and every day. I'll catch all of you on the next one.